Hi guys, this is Dipti and welcome to my channel Life Admin 365 and welcome to today's video. I have planned a lot of things to do. I'm starting my organization project right here in this kitchen as this is the place where I spend most of my free time when I'm home. I have been delaying cleaning and organizing kitchen for a very long time. So while my counters and surfaces are clean, sometimes the cabinets and closets are not as clean as much as I want them to be. So I'm going to first start with cleaning my spice cabinet and my spice drawer. Here you can see I have a setup ready to go. So without further ado, let's begin this cleaning and organizing project. This cabinet and drawer is where I store most of the herbs and spices. And for my convenience and ease of use, I've arranged them on the left side of my kitchen stove. Cabinet is where I keep the bulk spices, and as you can see, most of these jars are empty or have reached their rock bottom. Drawer is the place where I have my masala dabba holding my daily use spices along with frequently used herbs and spices, and look how dirty it has become. This is probably one of the only two places that are messy in my kitchen. This and refrigerator need frequent cleaning and organizing. First step is to get all the spice jars and containers out from the drawer and get the space wiped clean. It seems like the more I remove these containers from the drawer, more of these magically appear. I think I have about 16 or 17 of these flip-top spice jars. I got these cute little jars from IKEA and they have the perfect airtight seal that is required for storing aromatic herbs and spices. Initially, I had a mismatched set of jars and bottles, but during COVID lockdown, I had plenty of time, so I played around with measurements of the cabinets and containers and came up with a design. With IKEA literally being next door, I could shop there as soon as they were open to public. Look how badly this liner has stained from the spilled spices. I'm wearing gloves because I plan to use dilute bleach solution to clean the drawer. Using a paper towel, I'm removing and gathering these tiny seeds and herbs that are lodged in the middle gaps of the drawer joints. And then when everything is together in place, I'm using my mini handheld vacuum cleaner to remove them. Earlier, I used to use a mini brush and dustpan to clean the drawers, but now I prefer to use my mini vacuum cleaner. I have changed my mind about using the bleach solution and instead will use disinfectant wipes. These generic disinfectant wipes are from Kirkland brand, which is a Costco brand, and are equivalent to the traditional Clorox disinfectant wipes. It's so hard to get the turmeric stains off the drawer. I rarely use paper napkins or such wipes, but looking at these turmeric stains, I think it's best to use the disposable cleaning wipes. The second step is to transfer any remaining content and get the jars cleaned and dried up. Most of these spice jars are empty, so I'm going to get them soaking directly in soap water. So for those that are half full, I'm going to transfer everything to small vatis or small dishes and then get them to wash. I'm going to do the same process for my masala dabba containers as well. Transferring the spices is such a tedious work and a pain in the wrong place, especially the powdered spices. Powdered ones are driving me crazy and making me sneeze. Maybe I should have worn a mask. Anyways, everything from jars, plastic containers to masala dabba and its vatis and spoons are going in the sink. I'm going to dispense some liquid dish soap in this dabba and turn it into hot soapy liquid. Spreading this liquid all over the jars and containers and spraying hot water over it to get them soaking for 5 to 10 minutes. These rings too need to be taken off from the lids and kept for soaking. These rings are grimy and stained and in much need of cleaning, washing, rinsing and setting them off for drying. Cleaning the stainless steel dabba and its vatis and spoons is not a big deal. It's getting done pretty quickly. But these glass jars are slipping out of my hands and the lids are giving me a hard time. Both sides of my sink are filled up with washed jars and containers air drying. I am shaking off any water droplets hanging from these jars or lids and turning them over to air dry from the insides as well. And while they are air drying, I'm taking a much needed break and having coffee. After coffee break, it's back to work. Next in line is this mini drawer that houses not necessarily just my spices, but a mishmash of spices and condiments from takeout meals. First in line are the tea, coffee and sugar containers, followed by lots of ketchup, taco sauces and chili flake packets, bunch of tamarind and mint chutney sachets,
and some of my everyday spices as well. Process is the same as earlier, that is removing all the containers and jars and condiment trays, transferring jar contents to separate bowls or sorting the condiment packets and throwing away any expired or unwanted ones, washing and air drying the jars, and lastly vacuuming the drawer to get off all the debris and wiping it clean. And while these are air drying, previously washed and air dried containers are ready to be filled. But before that, it's essential to ensure that they are indeed dry. I'm giving them a thorough wipe both inside and outside with a dry towel. These lids are a little tricky because of the hard to reach spots. For those, I'm draping this thin towel over the back end of the spoon and swiping it along the insides of the jar rim to absorb any remaining moisture droplets. This way, I'm completely ensured that the jar along with the lid is completely dry. With that done, it's time to wipe the sealing rings and put them on the lip of the lid. This is such a boring task. Just aligning the tab of the ring so that it doesn't interfere with the closing clip of the jar is taking me forever. Even the later washed plastic jars and containers have dried up completely by the time I'm done putting these rings correctly. And here is a quick look at every spice jar and container that I've washed and dried so far. The third step is to start refilling and putting things back in their spot. And I'm beginning with this small drawer. I have rearranged condiment packets that I keep as backups. Also, there are some instant noodle sachets for hot garlic flavor and some pizza flavoring packets. These Apple iPhone boxes were the only ones that could fit not only perfectly in the space but also corral these extras and backups from takeouts, keeping this drawer tidy and organized. This space also holds some of my other spices that couldn't find space in the big spice drawer. Then there is keto sweetener, which I sometimes use in my smoothie or puddings, and I like to keep it here in a small quantity for easy reach and access. Figuring out if I want to put the containers back the same way or place them in a different manner. But looks like the original setup is the best way to go, and I'm repeating the same process of transferring the stuff back to the clean containers. Well, it's definitely not a good idea to do the transfer right here over the clean drawer. I just cleaned it and I don't want to do a cleanup once more. The first row or the right row is the usual: tea leaves, sugar and coffee. An interesting thing that I'm realizing is that these jars with blue lids are the ones that I got from India almost 22 or 23 years ago when I first came to United States to study. I had 4 of them, and somewhere down the years one lost its way, but I still have 3 of these. Anyways, the empty container is for instant coffee, which I'm out of right now. The smaller empty container in the second row or on the back side is for coriander powder, which is another thing that I'm out of. And next to it, it's the cumin powder, then cardamom seeds, which nowadays are easy to find in stores, or you can peel the pods and remove and store the seeds yourself. And the last one to go in is gur or jaggery. In our style of Maharashtrian cooking, small quantities of either gur or sugar are added to the sabzi, dal or any savory dishes to balance out the acidity of the sour component like tomatoes or tamarind. Plus, I also use gur along with ghee as a prasad after doing puja. This last container is messing up the alignment of the jars, and because of my OCD, I can't take it, so I'm going to remove it. But I know that when the drawer opens or closes, the jars will move around, which is even worse in my opinion compared to misaligned jars. So I'm placing this small jar as a stopper for these moving containers. This is a baby food jar, which means I have had it for at least 12 or 13 years. What all I keep? Containers from 22 years and this jar from about 12 or 13 years ago. This drawer is neat and tidy with the mishmash of different things, styles and color, but overall aesthetic, at least to me. Time to tackle organizing of the cabinet of bulk spices, starting with removing the jars. This is such an awkward place for me to film as there isn't much space between this cabinet and my center island. Plus, these cabinets are deep cabinets, which makes reaching insides a bit difficult. But this is what I have and this is what I'm working with. It's much easier for me to sit in front of the cabinet and proceed, but then you guys will only see my back. So I'm sitting at an awkward angle to get this film. What all one does for YouTube views, you know. Again, the process is the same once more. Removing the herbs and spice jars. I am not going to wash these big jars. One thing I have always done is that before refilling these jars with herbs or spices, I will wash and dry them and only then refill them. That way the jars are always clean, and since I don't dip into these frequently, they remain clean for a long time. However, I'm going to wipe their lids and their outsides with a damp cloth just to remove surface dust if there is any. I'm using tiered white base spice jar risers for organizing my spice jars, along with a couple of IKEA shelf risers and some empty jars. I was looking for white base risers for these jars. These are about 4¼ inch wide and have 3 tiers. The best part is that they have adjustable sides so as to match the width of your cabinet. Only if I could get these removed from here without showing my back to you guys. And there we go. Behind are the IKEA shelf risers to add an extra tier. And since I want to use all of the cabinet space, I have stacked 2 empty jars to raise that portion of the cabinet as well. I have had this riser for almost 10 years now, so I don't remember exactly where I got it from, but most likely either from Container Store or Bed Bath & Beyond. I'm sure you can find a similar one on Amazon as well. This cabinet actually used to be a pull-out recycling cabinet, but my father-in-law removed the pull-out bin rack and converted it into a usable cabinet for me. Anyways, I've already cleaned the cabinet and I'm going to do the same for these IKEA shelf risers as well as the tiered riser. And with the magic of editing, I am ready to get things put back in place. Placing IKEA shelf risers at the back end and stacking one over the other. I am figuring out the best way to use this empty space. I'm thinking of stacking these 2 IKEA jars to raise the level. As I'm placing things, new ideas are popping in my mind and I'm reshuffling the jars once more to not only get the best fit but also to keep similar items together. So in these hard to access spots, I'm storing Indian pickle related spices which I use only once a year. So in the bottom I'm placing empty jar because that is one spot that will almost be impossible to reach unless I move the entire tiered rack. Placing the tiered spice shelf, and after some maneuvering around, I have got it expanded to fit my cabinet space. Time to start placing the spice jars. Placing the least to most used spice from back to the front of the shelf. Also, the most used spices are more closer to the door and the not so frequently used spices are towards the wall end of the shop. There are a few empty bottles because I'm completely out of those spices. So I'm adding them to my grocery list as well as updating my spice inventory list. So far I have shuffled jars a couple of times and I think I have the right placement of my spices. I did find an empty clean jar that I'm going to put back in the backmost empty spot so that if and when I buy a less frequently used spice, I have a place and a container to store it. I see that I have a couple of empty spots and after raking my brain, I've realized that I haven't kept my salt container. So after some more reshuffling, I have a spot for my pink Himalayan salt. This empty jar is for whole mustard seeds. And this along with the other spices are on my grocery list. Lastly, my black pepper mill. And this setup is done. Time for dinner, and once dinner is done, I am ready to finish the last part. What I did not show you guys is that before placing the big jars in the cabinet, I refilled these small jars and in some cases even emptied them out. So these jars which will go in the bigger drawer are fully stocked. For spices that don't make into the drawers or the cabinet but are used every now and then, or any unopened ready-made masala blends are put in this basket, and this basket goes in my pantry. Next on my organizing list is this pantry. It's not in bad shape, but it does need a quick cleanup, especially the bottom shelf and the upper pantry, because those are the places where the overflow packets get shoved in. This other basket has some other salad condiments and add-ons like capers, roasted peppers, different types of olives, oils like sesame seed oil, grapeseed oil, and vinegars like rice vinegar, red wine vinegar, balsamic vinegar, etc. Ready-made open spice blends like garam masala, pav bhaji masala, goda masala are always kept in the refrigerator. This project seems like a never-ending project. Time to wrap it up. Let's get these spice jars loaded in my drawer. Lining the drawer with paper towel with the hope that it acts as a barrier against the stains from the spices. Then placing a non-slip liner with the hope that the jars will not slide around the drawers or slam against each other. Just like the spice jars in the cabinets, here also most used spices and herbs are in the front and to my right. while the less frequently used ones are behind and to my left. One tip that I will share here is that for maximum utilization of the space, it's best to use straight-edged containers versus the round ones like I used. Square or rectangular jars sit flush against each other versus round jars where a lot of dead space remains between the jars. I searched high and low for such jars but couldn't find ones that would fit well. Most of them were taller than the height of the drawer, so closing became an issue, or didn't have clear lids, which made it compulsory to label them. Labeling means I can't wash the jars when they get empty. That is one of the reasons I don't label my jars. How to handle washing stuck on label jars? For bigger jars, maybe I can string the labels along the neck of the jar. But how to label these tiny round jars? I don't like to use markers, so that's not an option for me. I haven't used those peel-on clear labels that so many artsy cricket users make and use on their jars, but I'm not sure how often they wash the jars. I do wash my jars pretty regularly. Every time a jar gets emptied, I wash it out and dry it out completely before refilling it. If you guys have any experience with such labels or have other suggestions other than using a marker, please let me know in the comments below. Looks like after some shuffling around, especially the hing bottle and the saffron container, I finally have the jars in the right spot and everything looks good to me. Wow, I feel like I have conquered a mountain. Only thing remaining to do is clean the counters and floors and sink, and I can call it a night. It took me about 6 hours to complete this work, including washing, drying, refilling, taking coffee and dinner break, and doing the final cleanup. I think it was the awkward spacing of the camera and my cabinet that made it a little bit cumbersome for me to be effective, but other than that, everything got done in the scheduled time and as per plan. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you like this organization video and would like to see more such videos. If you do, please let me know in the comment section and give this video a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, do subscribe to my channel for more such organizing videos, meal planning and meal prepping videos and recipe videos. See you all in the next one.